All right, what's up? What's up, everybody? I am on the Hideout account today, but this is Nick Frontera, co-founder and CEO of Satoshiverse, coming to you from episode 84 of the Hideout. We've got an awesome panel today. We are going to be talking about Web3 gaming and the Metaverse, and we've got a stacked panel. So really excited to get into everything that is going on in the space. To start off, we're going to do some quick introductions here, starting with ourselves. So for those of you who don't know the Satoshiverse or what we have been building, the Satoshiverse was one of the first Bitcoin-themed comic IPs founded with legendary comic artist Jose Delbo, who worked for 50 years with Marvel and DC Comics on projects like Wonder Woman, Transformers, The Beatles' Yellow Submarine, you name it, he did it. We partnered with him to create Satoshi the Creator, a Bitcoin-themed superhero in, taking the story of Satoshi and expanding it. Beyond that, we spent the last 3 years developing the IP, developing the lore, and building it into what it is now, which is a gaming universe featuring our game Legions 2029. Very high level. Legions 2029 is a hybrid between a hack and slash combat system inspired by God of War and a RPG progression system inspired by games like Diablo and World of Warcraft, all mixed in with a roguelike combat loop roguelike game loop that was inspired by games like Hades. So we mixed a few different genres, made it fully blockchain enabled. It's free to play. I think that's the key thing. It's a PC game. You can download it and start playing today for free. We've got tons of awesome initiatives going on right now where you can win tons of prizes and get all sorts of free NFTs and USDC rewards. Check out the pinned tweet. I think that's probably the best thing to do to learn more about the project. You'll see videos. You'll see everything that's going on in season 1, including our battle pass. But yeah, that is us in a nutshell. We've got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of big announcements coming up. Been building now for the last 4 years. So really excited to keep building in the space. But my favorite thing that we do is this space is every week where we get to learn about other new awesome projects that have also been building in the space for a long time and are doing some incredible work. So without further ado, what we're going to do is we're going to do some introductions of our panelists, and then Spencer, who's on the Satoshiverse account, is going to take us away with the questions for today. So what we'll do is, a couple minutes, tell us what you're building, anything you've got coming up. I guess one important thing, feel free to pin anything that you would like to the top of the spaces. That is going to, give people the best view of your project. If you've got video, gameplay trailers, whatever it may be that's illustrative, feel free to pin it to the top of the space. And then I'm actually going to pin one more thing to the top of the space right now, which is the now live tweet for this announcement or for this Twitter Spaces. So what we've got here is just the post. Basically, obviously, this is letting people know that the space is going on. We'll try to give this a repost to get some people in here if you haven't already. But this is also going to drive our giveaway at the end of the spaces. So we're going to be giving away some Satoshi's crystals, which are the key resource in our universe. And if you want to get those crystals, all you have to do is be here at the end of the spaces and repost that tweet. Basically, what we do is we run everybody who's reposted it through a Twitter picker, and then at the end of the space, if we check if you're still here, and if you are, boom, you can win those crystals. So, all right, let's do some introductions. We'll start by jumping over to, let's start with Wanderers. Nice to have you on the space. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. How's it going? Just an introduction. We are a roguelite as well, so I love to hear that. Basically, when we were describing it to people, I like to say Hades mixed with Slay the Spire. So it's sci-fi, pretty cool. You go in, you jump in, there's cards and things like that to alter your abilities. And we actually just launched our open beta, or are launching our open beta today. So returning players can play now. So if you've been in our closed betas, you can play now. It's kind of a last second little bug squashing sesh. And then tonight at 7 p.m. EST, if you go to Epic, wishlist, I don't even know if wishlisting is open during this, but go to Epic, we're on there, 7 p.m. EST, anyone can play. So check it out. It's really fun.
Amazing. Well, I'm also a big fan of the genre, so always cool when we see other games building, kind of taking those concepts and applying, a Web3 element to them. So yeah, definitely exciting. Hades was one of my favorite games, so very cool to hear that you guys are taking inspiration from that. I think it's just a great game, so good one to take inspiration from. And if you haven't played Hades, good game to try out. Very well developed game. Let's jump over now to Full House. Welcome to the Hideout.
Hey guys, yeah, nice to be here. We at Full House, we're doing something completely different from roguelikes. We're in the pay-to-play genre, so we're a new age Web3 casino platform, wherein all of the platform revenues, so basically the platform fees that we collect, we redistribute back to the community in different ways. So similar to how a GMX, some of these decentralized perpetuals exchanges are redistributing fees to their token holders. We're doing the same, but with a pay-to-play gaming platform. And yeah, it's doing super well. You can check us out on fullhouse.gg, but yeah, you can play with any currency you like. And yeah, you can vote on all kinds of proposals if you hold a token. So we're sort of the decentralized version of Stake, and that's how you should think about us. And yeah, love to join in on the discussion after the round of introductions.
Yeah, no, I know we'll have some interesting questions. I'm always excited to hear more about kind of the real money and the gambling angle in this space, just because I think it's such it's a part of the space where there could be use cases of the technology that just don't exist in the Web2 space. So I'm very excited to hear more about that and dive a little bit deeper. I know that a lot of people that I know got their first introduction to Bitcoin, back in the day because they were on, online gambling websites and wanted to cash out. So I know quite a few people who left a little bit of Bitcoin dust in an online gaming account and ended up doing very well for themselves because they, had a couple Bitcoin at very low denominations, and then, 10 years later, found out that Bitcoin was worth something. So from that early stage to now, it's evolved so much, and I'm excited to hear more about what you guys are doing with it. Let's jump over to our friends at Euphorica who are returning here, and what have you guys been up to? Good to have you back.
I was just about to say, guys, thank you so much for having us back. The opportunity to return to the Hideout is one that we could not miss. We've been watching Satoshiverse for a long time, and great to have Spencer on as well. And we've spent time with Spencer as well. So super excited to be back. And for anybody that has forgotten who we are, and I'm sure you haven't, but just in case you have, we are a multi-chain hybrid gaming ecosystem, and we operate really across 4 pillars. So we have Ride to Survive, which is our debut gaming title. That's a hoverboard battle race game that's inspired by titles like Mario Kart, Super Smash Brothers, Pokemon, and Wipeout. We then have the Coltax, which are the nefarious alien race that exist within our lore, and they're coming to market as a hybrid digital asset collection. And I think we're going to talk about hybrids a little bit more on today's space. And then we have the ecosystem of Euphorica itself, which started life on Polygon. And then lastly, sharing some affinity with Satoshiverse, we have our Origin series comic book collection, which is the introduction to our lore. And we're very lucky as well to have some super talented artists that have come from, DC and Marvel universes, just like you guys. So loads of creative synergies that we have, and it's a pleasure to be back. And I've pinned a little post to the top of the space as well, because we have an affiliate account called the Coltac account, which is linked to the game itself. And we're currently looking for play testers. So definitely go and check that out and see how you can get involved. But it's great to be back, guys, and looking forward to today's discussion.
Amazing. Well, happy to have you. Excited to hear more about what you guys have been up to recently. And yeah, let's jump over to our last guest, who is Ted here on behalf of Chibi Clash.
Hey, pleasure to be here. So, Ted, aka Wago, founder CEO of Chibi Clash. I'm a returning guest as well, so it's great to be back. And we're in the midst of a campaign right now on the Chibi Clash universe. So, Olympics is happening, so we actually have this really cool event on our Kingdoms map in which people can basically represent the nation and compete in this capture the flag inspired event directly on the Kingdom map. So, for those of you that are not familiar with Chibi Clash, we're a gaming universe with multiple gaming titles, including an AI-powered metagame. So this is where people are, kind of casually competing for prizes right now. And we also have this AI-powered Olympic-inspired trivia quiz as well, in which people can enter a daily on-chain raffle for an actual plot of NFT land. So that's all happening right now. So if you guys haven't had a chance to check it out yet, now would be a great time. But also at very exciting times for Chibi Clash. We've been teasing obviously that there will be a Clash token associated with the project that will be coming out soon. That was part of our prizes for our recent Alliance campaign, in which we partnered with over 20 gaming projects for a similar Capture the Flag event on our Kingdom map. So that was very successful. And so a lot of exciting stuff happening on our project. And I'm happy to jump into the conversation for today's panel as well.
Amazing. Well, welcome back to the spaces, and excited to dive in as well on some of these issues. And to take us there, let's go over to Spencer on the Satoshiverse account.
What is going on, everyone? Like Nick said, my name is Spencer. I am the business development manager here with Satoshiverse and with Apollo Entertainment. So I'll be asking the questions on the space today. I'm going to go over a couple quick housekeeping items before we jump into the questions here. So like Nick mentioned before, we're doing a giveaway as we always do on our spaces. So up top, the pinned tweet from the Hideout that says we're live. If you are here in the space at the end of the space and give that a retweet or a repost, that will give you eligibility to win 5 Satoshi's crystals, which is our main in-game resource for upgrading your items and characters within the game. Very, very important resource within the Satoshiverse. So make sure to give that post a retweet or a repost if you have not already. And then another reminder for any of the guests here, please pin anything to the top that's relevant to what you guys are working on so that everybody who's here listening can get some visuals. Moving into the format. So we are going to be starting off with a question for everyone. And then I will call on someone to start in the group, and then feel free to just jump into the discussion from there. Then we'll move into individual questions for each of you guys. And then if we have time at the end, we'll do another group question. And then we'll choose our giveaway winner at the very end of the space. So make sure to stick around. And then last thing, if you're not already following the Hideout account up here, would appreciate if you guys could give the Hideout a follow. We're trying to build up the brand a little bit on this space, and we'd really appreciate that. Awesome. So moving on to the first question here. And then why don't we have Yaken at Wanderers, if you don't mind starting us off at this one. So what do you think are the biggest barriers to mainstream adoption of Web3 gaming, and how can they be overcome?
Yeah, so I think I kind of have 2 answers to this. So first off, a big one. So I like to use this example. There was a pirate game that came out from Ubisoft kind of recently. I forgot what it was called. Skull and Bones. So in order to play it, like my dad bought the game, $70. In order to play it, you had to link a Ubisoft account to your Xbox, and you couldn't play without doing that. And he, for the life of him, could not figure it out and just said, fine, I wasted $70. So if you want people to play your game, make it easy to play it. I think we're getting there. There's a lot of games that have like a no wallet, just use your email, create an account type of feature, and get the wallet later if you need it type of thing. And I think that's the way to go. And I think we're seeing that a lot. So definitely just make your game easy to play. Because I mean, if it's fun, people want to play it, don't make it hard to play. That's just kind of a big thing, that I've noticed. And then on the second part, I think just kind of the landscape of it being accepted, and maybe USA is not like the only place that matters, but politically and everything, it's not really like super accepted yet. But if that changes, I think that'll help a lot with people being more okay with crypto and games and other applications, things like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I think that you touched on a couple of points that I think kind of lead to some of what I was thinking. You know, on the barriers to entry front, we've come a really long way, but we're not there yet, right? Like we've seen account abstraction solutions come out that make signing up for a wallet much, much easier. And even if you don't want to go, you know, full wallet, if you just play with an email type of thing and then onboard people later, there's better pipelines for doing that now. We call it, you know, Web 2.5 here. And I think that is something, you know, interesting that we need to be thinking about, getting people hooked on the game, excited about the game, and then, you know, giving them an incentive later to actually jump through a couple of the hoops and hopefully making those hoops easier to jump through. Because there's always going to be a little bit that you're going to have to deal with when it comes to self-custody and understanding what, you know, these real money elements to games are, right, in order for the use case to work. But making that as simple as buying V-Bucks on Fortnite, right? Things that are fully integrated in the game and very intuitive. You know, if you want to buy stuff in a game, you're going to have to jump through a couple hoops regardless, but you don't need to do that to play the game. And I think that's going to be, you know, a system that's been hashed out in Web 2 and needs to be hashed out in Web 3. And I think we're finally starting to get there. I think the second point you made is actually a huge one, right? I think that kind of expanding on what you said about the regulatory climate around Web3 gaming. I think one of the biggest reasons we haven't seen major AAA studios start to incorporate this technology in interesting ways is because the regulatory climate, frankly, all around the world is so uncertain around Web3 in general and Web3 gaming. I think that as we start to see more clearly defined paths, we're going to start to see incorporation into bigger titles. We've already seen PlayStation, Sony and Microsoft filing patent applications to integrate Web3 technology into their consoles. I think at least for high fidelity games, that is going to be a major moment. I think for Web3 gaming is when we can start to see, you know, major Web3 games integrating Web3 natively on consoles with, you know, wallet infrastructure already built into the console. I think we're still a little bit away from that, but I think that's going to be kind of one of the pivotal moments in user onboarding for at least high fidelity Web3 gaming. I think right now it's easier to do that on browser. But yeah, I think, you know, I guess the other thing that we need to do just at a very high level is change the narrative, right? I think the narrative around Web3 gaming has been one of kind of quick to market, you know, lower quality games. And that was kind of the meta in the last cycle. I think now we're starting to see games that people have put years of work into. And so it's really on us to try to change the narrative about Web3 gaming and help users see you know, kind of the quality that can come out of us. And then just a quick housekeeping item. We'll usually start with someone on the everyone questions, but yeah, just feel free. You can raise your hand or feel free to just jump in. So since Euphorica is raising their hand, let's go over to Euphorica.
We've got very good manners here. We do like to raise our hand on our side. But actually, look, I think just you covered a couple of points there. I just wanted to touch on, which was quality and value, you know, as two focus words to really tune in on. So on the quality side, I agree with you completely. I think the difference we're seeing now is that the space has matured. I think the quality of games starting to come out, whether it's into alpha or beta, you know, is really high, and that's really good. And that's the thing that I think is going to start to attract more mainstream attention, because the benchmark is being hit now in terms of what gamers want to see and what they expect to see. And also just game loops and game mechanics being fun and enjoyable to play. I think that's going to be a really key part of where we go from here. And then the second point is just around value extraction for the player. So I think, when you have a fun gameplay environment, it's how do you add that additional layer of value for the player, and how does ultimately blockchain enable that? And I think the onboarding tooling that we've got now is way better than it was, even just a year ago. It's come such a long way. So I think users are finding easier pathways into the games that they're playing, and they're finding now different ways that they can receive value from the games that they're playing. And, you touched on a couple of components to that, but the other obvious point is, the rewards within a game. We're a race game ultimately, so it's a very clear thing whether you've either won or you haven't, and the rewards that are attributed to that. So what additional value a crypto-based reward can bring to the player is a really interesting concept, and I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go through the space. But I certainly think, those barriers are becoming less and less, but it's because the quality and the value is increasing all the time in the space.
Yeah, totally agree. Anyone else want to jump in with some thoughts? All right. Not hearing anything. So, Spencer, why don't we continue on?
Sure thing. All right. So first individual question, we'll go back to Simon. So I'm actually very interested in hearing your thoughts on this, because this is something a little new to me, and was introduced to SPL 404s through you guys. So why do you think the SPL 404 NFT token standard on Solana is impactful, and how do you think it will affect Web3 gaming? And if you can kind of give a little, kind of introduction for people who haven't heard of it, that'd be great as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the important thing to note here is that, SPL is a very Solana specific terminology, and I'll talk about what we're doing there. But actually, the concept of hybrid assets originates from hybrid DeFi in a much broader sense. So this is where you essentially take two forms of assets, an NFT and then a fungible token that's aligned to that NFT. And what it does is it just presents that additional layer of value to a holder. So you have a choice of whether you utilize an NFT because of the utility that it represents, or in the case of a game economy, it might be that you can flex an NFT because it's a status symbol, or it brings additional mechanics or powers within the game itself. But then you have a fungible token that's aligned to that NFT, and you can choose to swap the NFT to a fungible token and recognize the potential benefits that a fungible token can give you. So that's what hybrid DeFi in a very, very high level explanation is. It's the ability for a holder to swap between either their NFT or a fungible token and vice versa. So SPL is the Solana equivalent of hybrid DeFi, or how we bring hybrid assets on Solana. SPL has now evolved actually more to MPL. SPL as a term was invented by a team at Mutant Mon, which was an NFT hybrid project. And they have a very strong dev team over there, and they created the standard. But there were those that came before them, exploring hybrids on Ethereum, for example. The standard on Solana has evolved to MPL, which is backed by a company called Metaplex, and they have a series of good tooling that creators and devs can utilize to create hybrid assets. So, in the context of why we think it's impactful, I mean, we've always advocated for multi-chain. So we started life with an ERC20 token on Polygon, which was our ecosystem token and is to this day our ecosystem token. And then for our game specific economy, we started exploring hybrid DeFi in December of last year. And then really in sort of January, February, it started to gain a bit more momentum and a bit more maturity. And, we really understood the value that it presented to a player in the context of our game. And to be clear here, it's, everybody's going to have a different take on this, and what works for us may not work for a different game economy. But because we are, what we are in terms of a race game, in terms of our genre, the use case for hybrids was very clear to us, enabling a player to swap from one asset to the other. So in terms of Solana, the choice was because, we felt culturally there was a really good and strong appetite for hybrid DeFi on Solana. But as I say, it's just part of a bigger, broader picture that we have when we consider multi-chain. And I think, it is seeing good traction now. I think, there's been inevitably when you have a new standard that arises, you have those that try and exploit it, but that's nothing new. But I think for all of the builders that are really exploring it and looking at the value aligned to what hybrid assets can deliver, there's something really interesting here. And, as I mentioned, you've got the Solana variants, you've got the Ethereum variants. There will be others that, expand onto other chains that will bring value to those chains as well. And we're excited to see where that goes. And, 404 became a bit of a sort of terminology, meta terminology to support it. But I want to make the point that it's hybrid is the real term that we have to utilize when thinking about this. I think, in terms of its impact on Web3 gaming, it just comes back to the point I was making originally around player choice. And I think, as we've discussed in that brief intro question, it's all about how do we continue to add and bring more value to the player. And hybrids is just another tool in the toolbox that can support what a game economy does for its players. And that's how we're approaching it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at a presentation, it was probably 4 months ago now, with a project doing something very similar on in the EVM ecosystem. Essentially, they were calling them NFFTs, non-fungible fungible tokens. So maybe I think we need to work a little bit all around on the branding for these. But anyways, it was the same idea that you could flip back and forth between a fungible and a non-fungible token. And for lower value assets specifically, or just assets where you want to have fungible tokens that can then have, unique properties that function a certain way within an ecosystem, it did seem like a particularly interesting use case for the technology, because then you can tap into liquidity in different ways, and it's interesting that way. And I guess one of the where my mind obviously was gaming and thinking through how it could be used for gaming, and I do think there's some really interesting use cases. So I would love, are they already integrated within your ecosystem? Because if you guys are already using them, I'd love to really understand. I can check it out later, but I got very intellectually curious about how a game would actually implement these tokens and how that use case plays out at scale. So if you guys are already doing it, I might have some questions for you after the space to check out, because I think it's really cutting edge.
Yeah, well, go and check out the post that I pinned to the space, because that'll take you to our affiliate account, which is called Coltac404. And that is ultimately the account that's driving all the content that's focused on the hybrid side of what we're doing. So, that's where you can get more information about how we're approaching it within Ride to Survive, which is obviously our game. So definitely go and give that a follow, and you can check out more information. And there's a ton of resources as well for anybody that's, curious or wants to learn more about what hybrid assets and hybrid DeFi can bring to a game economy.
I love it, and I definitely will check it out, and I encourage everyone to do it, because it is a really interesting new kind of take on tokens. And I think we're going to have quite a few of those in the gaming space, where people are trying to solve some of the issues that traditional NFTs have when adapted to gaming. So really cool to see that that's on Solana. The more I talk to people, the more Solana sounds like it's going to be a very big player it already is, but continue to be a big player in Web3 gaming, just because of the throughput and the way that the blockchain is developed. So definitely cool to see, a lot of innovation happening on Solana as well. All right, Spencer, back to you for the next question.
Cool. So the next question is going to go to Leon at Full House. So how do you think the integration of blockchain technology is changing the online gambling industry, and how do you see it progressing over time?
Yeah, I think I do want to make it a little bit more holistic. Since the beginning of cryptocurrency, a very large portion of transactions flowed actually through online gambling platforms. Some analysts and some on-chain analytics platforms even push this amount like 20 to 40% of all transactions have at some point, these coins have at some point moved through a casino. So, this genre has been around forever. Gambling since the start of civilization was one of the first things people started doing to entertain themselves, but also to potentially, make money or risk some money. I think meme coin trading is very much gambling as well. A lot of the crypto space revolves around sort of this narrative, right, of high risk, high reward. So just, taking that scope into account when talking about this industry, I think it's important. It's definitely not something new. But I do see that there's very few gambling-related cryptocurrencies in the top 100 market cap. I believe not even one right now. So there's not many gambling platforms that have actually, really incorporated, tokenized economics and the Web3 community very well. They're all sort of legacy players that some of them added a cryptocurrency token. But the value that they are creating as a platform doesn't attribute to the market cap at all. That's why they're not in the top 100, because otherwise a platform like Rollbit or some of the other casinos that do have a token would be much higher on the list. So yeah, what do I see happening in the next, say, 18 months is there will be maybe a maximum handful of players that start really doing Web3 marketing well, integrating their token very well into the platforms and attributing a lot of value to the token as well as to the community around it. Really, honoring these Web3 ideals. And this will create a lot of value in terms of market cap. I do think there would be easily 1 to 2 projects in the top 20 of market cap in this category. Currently there are 0 again. So, it's, even if 10% of yearly revenues would reflect back to the token market cap, then some of these would be in the top 10. Some of these platforms that are already pre-existent. If our revenues keep growing like they are right now, and our token is coming out in 3 weeks, the airdrop for the token is launching in 2 days. So if you want to participate in that, definitely check it out. But if we keep growing like this, for the next 6 months, we'll likely be in the top 50 market cap as well, as we are planning to, redistribute a lot of this wealth and a lot of these fees back to the community and back to the token. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on the market. I would love to hear what some of you guys here think about it, whether you have any, connection to gambling, or what do you think of this narrative? But I think it's definitely a very underrated one so far, and in very few of the last sort of hype cycles and bull runs, has it become very clear that there's something there, even though, I think the second largest company in Web3 after Tether is Stake.com. So, I definitely think, there will come a time when, this, industry will really, come into the limelight and, be pushed very hard by everybody online. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can give my 2 cents. I'm not necessarily an industry veteran, but as someone who, grew up playing poker and really enjoys, some aspects of gambling, I think that there's so many use cases that Web3 can touch on and potentially improve. And I think one of the ones that you mainly focused on was this value distribution, right? Essentially decentralizing some of the revenue allocations and incentivization to grow a platform, which makes a ton of sense, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of skill-based gambling gaming is simply, or even non-skill-based, right, is simply reskinned versions of the same very basic games. And those games have persisted for a very, very, very long time, and people enjoy playing them, and the draw is the gambling. And so one thing that I think Web3 can definitely improve on is the fairness element, right? We've already seen projects implementing, Oracle systems and different types of authentication measures to ensure that their random number generators are provably fair for some of these gambling games. And so I think that is an interesting use case of the blockchain. I do think that, it's probably, sometimes I look at this through the regulatory lens just because my background was legal. I think that one of the reasons we haven't seen a ton of gambling cryptocurrency platforms is because it's the single riskiest business to build in Web3 from a regulatory standpoint. I think that, we saw it during the ICO boom. The ICOs that were largely attacked were the ones that had a gambling angle. And I do think that has scared at least a lot of US companies away from building, more extensive gambling platforms. But I also think that there's a huge opportunity there. When we talk about skill-based gaming in general, we're seeing new genres emerge with these peer-to-peer transactions and smart contracts for custody that are allowing you to do things in a more decentralized manner and therefore not fall under some of these regulatory, restrictions where you're able to say, hey, I want to do a prop bet on this game, and it's going to be a bet that is literally just, a bet between two people, and there is no third-party intermediary. It's simply a smart contract, and there is so much potential there for that to get built out. I think that one company that stood out that had some early success, I'm not sure if they were ever a top 100 market cap, but probably at least in the early days, 2020, 2021, they were I think the clearest example of a gambling, decentralized gambling was Decentral Games, which was developing these Metaverse casino games in Decentraland, and then beyond. Now they have a token that used to be DG, now it's called BAG, and they built up during the bull, a pretty awesome market cap that had a lot to do with revenue redistribution and some of these things. So I think that's a pretty good example of the potential. And then, if done right, especially by a company that has funding, for example, that has the resources to put 20, 30, $1 million into development and marketing and, really all the regulatory licensing that's required. I think that there's just so much potential for there to be a major player. I think, when we look at the top 10, 20 market cap cryptocurrencies, there's some consistent themes to what's up there. They're usually either stable coins or protocol tokens. And so I do think that there's a chance that, if there is ever going to be a game token in the top 25 or even 50, gambling's probably the clearest route because it's the clearest path to, consistent revenue generation and sustainable redistribution like you guys are talking about. But yeah, definitely very exciting. I think there's definitely potential, for a project like that to grow very quickly, especially in a bull market.
Yeah, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head there. And if you look at precedents, right? If you prior cases of platforms like this doing well and these like having steady revenues, which isn't an issue in Web3 gaming so far as companies going out of business. 90% of companies, stopping operations after a few years. We do think this pay-to-play model with its slightly addictive nature and the excitedness of playing these games just makes users stick around and helps the platform economics. The average value for a click is much higher than the average Web3 gaming platform, and it just makes a lot of things easier. And I think that's all I'll say for now before I take too much time.
Awesome. Thank you, Leon. We'll move on now to Ted. So how do you think AI can improve both the development process for games and the gameplay experience for players?
Yeah, definitely more than happy to chime in, and definitely very interesting approaches to apply new technologies across the different projects here. Definitely learning a lot from both the kind of Solana side of things and on the gambling side of things, touching upon that, my first project in gaming was actually Zynga Poker. So way back in the days, and I always remember this. I never understood why people played poker on mobile because you cannot win money, right? It's just purely playing a game for fun. So, I think, obviously a lot goes into making, a gambling product. Definitely have my hands on, you're working on, different products that are associated with gambling. And, I think, obviously Web3 has a lot of, upside for enabling that. So, definitely looking forward to seeing what, Full House builds, just kind of out of personal interest as well. But, by nature, game design, right? Gacha mechanics, RNG, and a lot of this stuff, has a bit of gambling mechanics to it. And, relating to AI, some of the stuff that we're doing with AI. So, obviously I can talk all day about, where things are at with AI. It's an area that we've really dug, on deep end in terms of exploring, large language models, in terms of exploring autonomous agents and how they can enable new gaming experiences. But pertaining to a project, I think, first and foremost, one of the challenges with AI, is consistency, right? So right now, when you get an output from a language model, because the models are always being upgraded, always being trained, the result you get one day might be different than the other, right? So it takes, certain consistency with training the model to get the output that you want. And sometimes that might mean actually dumbing it down, right? But I think games are the perfect platform for experimenting with AI. If something goes wrong, there is, still a lot of ways in which you can kind of get around it and say, oh, that's actually part of the experiment, right? So if the NPC goes off and say something a little bit weird, or if the output is weird, there's always fallbacks in which we can create in a backend and say that, okay, if the code doesn't recognize a certain input to create a certain dialogue or a certain action in the game, then it can default to this, right? But whereas in the real world, that obviously has a lot more challenges to it, right? Like, if you were to, do customer service, take an order, or any kind of real world application, you don't really have the luxury, right? So I think, right now gaming really is a great platform for exploring application of AI. And some of the ways in which we're trying to really push the boundaries with what we can do, with AI, and gaming, and specific to Web3 gaming, is, allowing, the world to be influenced by autonomous agents. So this is an area that we're going to start digging into, especially after we introduce our, token economy, is that people can influence the shaping of our world through autonomous agents, right? So the agents will be trained with, our game design, will be empowered to be able to, affect live ops, to change the state of the map, to even perhaps create events, right? But there are ways in which the players can engage and interact with these agents to actually be able to influence what happens in the game. I think, this is something that, even for us is very experimental. We don't know exactly how this would turn out, but I think there's a lot of, interesting things in which, being a game, sometimes having that, uncertainty actually, adds to, the gameplay in itself, because, we create the rules, but we no longer want to see ourselves as, the gods and the ones that control everything that happens in the game, right? We actually want to see where AI can take, the narrative, can take, even the rewarding of the players, and through the AI, we can also allow players to have a say in terms of what happens in a world. So, that's something that we're going to be very much looking forward to, in terms of exploring what can be done, with, AI and on-chain gaming.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a interesting way to keep the game experience fresh too, right? With I think if you get the pipeline down in a way that it's working, and it finally is kind of executing the vision that you guys have, I think there's the potential for all sorts of games to just be constantly new and fresh and more interesting, more dynamic, just because you never know what's going to come next. And I think there's probably going to be tons of challenges, right? Like learning how to do it, but that's why we're here. I think that's going to be a super cool way to approach the design, process. And I'm excited to see how that turns out.
Awesome. Now moving on to our final individual question over to Wanderers. So Wanderers recently entered open beta, and you talked about how you're going to be launching on Epic, and you've been kind of doing this final push with your users. So how do you think the process of collecting and implementing user feedback during early development stages differs between Web 2 and Web 3 gaming?
Yeah, interesting question. So, for Web 2, all I can do is really compare it to some of the beta tests that I've done there. So like I did a few for World of Warcraft, mainly MMOs, like Star Wars, Old Republic, stuff like that. A lot of that was just stress testing. So I mean, people may have had different experiences where they get in on an earlier build and are able to provide more feedback. But a lot of that is they just let people in to test where their servers are at, and then the next test they'll let more people in, that type of thing. So with Web3, I definitely noticed like with the community aspect, community vibe and everything, it's definitely taken into account more the feedback and things like that. And just us, for instance, we our infinite mode kind of had a problem where it was too easy. We had a ton of feedback on that and totally changed it between our two closed betas. So I enjoy that being on the game side, but having been on the other side, it's definitely a little different, at least in my experience.
Awesome. Appreciate the response. And yeah, definitely tell you, I mean, we've been working with our users hard to improve our game. And, we definitely like that feedback and being able to have that positive feedback loop. Euphorica, I see you got your hand up over there, Simon.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting point as well. And I do feel that there's a more sort of, I don't know how to describe it. Like there is a more of a sort of an open approach to building in Web3 when it comes to gaming. I think it's something you don't often get. And I think, we've been able to benefit from that by having our community get really stuck in and involved with the actual build process. And, we've been very transparent about the way in which we've built and, showcasing what we're doing every step of the way and taking feedback as we go. And I do feel it is a little bit more community led, I think, in Web3, which is obviously, as you would expect, that's one of the core values of the space. But I'm interested just to throw that back to Wanderers. Do you feel that? Do you feel that it is a more sort of open dialogue between the community and you guys as devs?
100%. Yeah. So I'm actually the community manager, so I'm usually the one relaying that information between the two. So definitely, I definitely see that for sure.
Do you feel like your community is open to that as well? Are they kind of really willing to contribute and give you that feedback, or because sometimes we feel like we have to sort of make it obvious that we're searching for feedback on a particular element, whereas at other times our community will put something out there and they'll just dive in and say, well, here's what we think, et cetera, et cetera. Do you guys have the same kind of approach, or has it been a bit different for you?
So I'm not going to lie. In a way, we kind of bribed them to give feedback. They got extra experience, and at the time, they didn't know it was towards.
That's part of it too, right?
So that was initially what we did. They got experience in their codex. They didn't know it was towards play to airdrop at the time, but it's contributing. So that initially got it, and then I think when they saw that we actually implemented their feedback from that, we got even more on our second closed beta, and I'm expecting a lot on this open beta phase.
Yeah, it's really cool when that happens. Like we've had a whole bunch of some of our characters, which the community have ended up naming because it started off as just a kind of an event that we were running within our channels, and then we moved it into Discord, and it just became a thing. And then before we knew it, we had 33 characters that the community had created content for and had given names to, and it just sort of spiraled from there. But that was a really cool example of how the community being actively involved in your build can just do something quite special. So yeah, it's just cool to hear other examples from other projects of how they've tackled it.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to kind of echo some of the things that have been said, it's something that we've had very front of mind is this idea of building with the community. And I think sometimes, depending on the size of the studio, you almost have to, right? Because your community becomes your testing department of your game. And of course, you're doing some internal testing. But in a lot of these gaming projects, including ours, we are releasing content way earlier than it would normally be released in the AAA gaming space, and even with most indie studios in the Web2 space. And so that ability to get early feedback, I think it's got some risk to it, right? I think it could color people's view of what you're building and how you're building it. But I think if you're doing it right, and I think if you have a community that supports the project, at least our experience has been that the people who love the game and want to see the vision executed are more than willing to give feedback. I know, several of them are in this spaces, and, we've got people who play the game consistently, several hours a week, even sometimes a day when there's tournaments or things going on, and then kind of come back and give their thoughts. If there's a bug, it's usually the community that finds the ones in the live version. So that's always good. We've even had, community members who have development backgrounds, kind of, I guess, take a more hacky approach at the game and see, okay, like, are there exploits? Are there ways to kind of beat the game? And that's been tremendously helpful to us to close some of those exploits and make sure that there's not ways to cheat and do things. And then, there's also fun ways to include the community. And I think that at its core is part of the Web3 ethos. I mean, for our, I can speak to our background, right? We were not a venture funded game, and we didn't do a token launch. And I think a token launch is even more of a, community funded approach as well. So I think that, because we were funded through some of our NFT launches and the actual development of the IP early on, we had a user base that had a lot of skin in the game, and we still do, even if it's just a couple thousand holders that have invested, at this point, probably several $100s. That's much more than just about any indie game in the Web2 space would have in terms of early skin in the game from your community. And so I think that that's important. It's important to recognize that people don't just view this as a game that's going to contribute to the gaming ecosystem. In a sense, it's their game. It's a game that we are building, for them and because of them. And if it weren't for them, it would be very difficult for us to build it. So, we've kind of always had that approach to the IP more broadly, especially, with our IP beginning as a more, I would call it a niche, even though I feel like the entire Web3 gaming space is a bit of a niche right now. But, given that we are Satoshiverse and we do have a lore that talks about blockchain and educates people on the history of blockchain and kind of builds on this story of, sensationalizing Satoshi and making him into a superhero, we had to take a very, specific look at, okay, who are our users? Who are the people who actually care what we're doing? And, I think that's what's kept us, I think, consistently having that core community involved. I think it's a different beast to try to think about how do we scale this into, a huge game that's accepted by the masses. I think, that's kind of, build a great game and then market it right. And that will, could follow. But I think that in the early stages, the way that these projects are being built, it's just so important to have community be a part of that process.
Awesome. Well, we are coming up at the end of the space here, so I want to announce our giveaway winner and then pass it back to Nick and then all of our wonderful guests to give some final closing thoughts. So the winner today of 5 Satoshi's crystals is Charles Francis, or at DeFi_Godwin1. Congratulations. If you have not already created an account with Satoshiverse, please go to play.legions2029.com, create a free account, and send a DM to the Satoshiverse account, and we will make sure to drop those 5 Satoshi's crystals into your account so that you can get going and start using them. So Nick, I will pass it back to you to close us out.
Amazing. Well, as always, thank you to everyone who is here live and listening. You know, I always enjoy doing these spaces because I think yeah, there's people working behind the scenes, Spencer, Lau, Danny, who are, you know, making these spaces special every single week, getting some awesome guests to be here. But it's a testament to the fact that these are great spaces and that the guests are building awesome things, that people show up every week and you know, listen and hear and you know, hopefully can participate. And I guess that's where I was going with this. Thank you for being here. I've spent the entire spaces while I wasn't talking trying to go and follow all of you. So if you can, you know, return the favor, we definitely want to know what you are up to and learn and see. You know, feel free to comment on the posts. This is a very organically driven spaces. You know, we kind of source the material for the future spaces based on what we're hearing feedback. So we really do want to hear more about what people want to hear on these spaces. We'll continue to make sure that we have some awesome projects up here every week and that we are kind of leading the space in thought leadership. And that's not possible without you guys attending every week and showing a nice audience for these spaces. And then, you know, for the guests themselves continuing to give their time. So thank you to the people who attended. Thank you to the guests. Please do go and follow all the guest projects as well. Give them some love. We really do try to place guests on this space who are doing some awesome stuff. So, you know, definitely check them out. I guess in terms of, closing out the space, basically what we'll do is anyone can kind of give the last, you know, minute or so of what's coming up, reminding people what they need to do to participate in the project. And then we'll wait about 30 seconds and then Spencer will close the space just because there's a slight delay between the speakers and the listeners. But I guess, for our sake, for those of you who weren't here in the beginning, Legions 2029 is our game. We've been building it for the last 3 years now. It's pretty far along. We're still developing with the community. I won't go too deep into it, but check out the pinned tweet on our profile on Satoshiverse and on the top of the spaces. We're currently live with season 1. We've got a ton of stuff going on, a lot of opportunities to, you know, win some prizes, win some money, some cool stuff going on. So check it out. Pretty low barrier to entry. It's a PC game. You just probably need a decent gaming PC. If you can play other high fidelity games, you should be able to play ours, but it is a PC game, but it's free. So give it a download. All the instructions are in the the pinned tweet. Well, now I'm tripping over my words, but just to wrap it up, thank you so much. And if any of the guests want to give a quick little outro, feel free, and then we will wrap up the spaces.
Well, just thanks, guys, from us, you know, for having us back again. And I'll keep it brief. Check out the pin post with instructions on how you can get involved with our playtest for Ride to Survive and learn more about how we're incorporating hybrid assets into our gaming economy and beyond. But thanks so much, guys, for having us back. It's been a pleasure to be with you and alongside some of the really great speakers on the panel today. So thanks so much.
Yeah, likewise, great to be here. Definitely enjoy listening to all the panelists, talking about their respective projects. For us, like I said in the beginning, we've got a very exciting couple of weeks ahead. We're in the middle of our Battle of Nations campaign, so you can see the details on our pinned tweet as well. And one thing I didn't mention in the beginning is that we are actually doing our pre-registration for our mobile game. So I think, one of the things that we didn't really quite talk about is the fact that, Web3 gaming lives across different platforms, right? Not just different chains. So, we have a browser game. We are now going to be launching our mobile game. A lot of great games are on, PC executables, downloadable through, Steam and Epic. So love seeing all the different great games, and all the great games that are popping up in the Web3 space. I'm looking forward to growing the space with everyone here together.
Awesome. I guess I can jump in. Don't forget, tonight, 7 Eastern, go on Epic, play Wanderers. Forgot to mention the play to airdrop in the pin post up top. You can check it out. But that is starting today as well. And yeah, thanks for being here. Love talking to everybody, and excited to check out some of the games that are up here. You have a good one.
All right, with that, we will close it up. Spencer, we'll just wait for the delay, and then we'll close up the spaces. Thank you, everyone.